Yo, what is up guys? Welcome to another video. By the time you're watching this, I think it'll be day 28 of the fast. It's getting deep into the fast, man. It's getting crazy. But yo, today I wanted to talk about an interesting subject. Definitely more spiritual, kind of esoteric subject, but I think it'll have a lot of value. Essentially, what is real, right? What is reality, I guess you could say. And I'm gonna be basing this off experience, because essentially experience is the only thing that you really know. So we're gonna see what exactly is real, or more real or less real in terms of your actual experience. And I think it has a lot of good implications because it kind of lets you know what you should be focused on, you know, what you should actually care about and be worried about. So a lot of people could argue that everything is real. You know, everything in your experience is real because you're experiencing it, right? And then a lot of other people could argue that essentially nothing is real, or there's just one absolute truth and everything else isn't real at all. And you could really argue both points forever, right? I think a better way to go about it is to kind of go from the perspective that some things are more real than others in your experience. And how exactly do we determine this? How do we say one thing is more real than the other thing? Well, I think it really comes down to the idea of impermanence, okay? So there's a great quote from this book called The Course of Miracles. And it says that nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God, right? And I think that's a very powerful quote. And it's essentially saying that something that's real cannot be threatened. It's always there, it's always permanent, and we're gonna get into that. I'm gonna tell you guys what that reality is. But first, let's talk about the things that are less real, okay? So we have this kind of permanent reality, which I'll talk about in a minute. Let's talk about all the impermanent things in our reality now that are less real than that. So just going off a day-to-day normal experience, let's think about things that are impermanent. Well, here's the funny thing. Essentially everything that you experience in day-to-day life essentially is impermanent. It's transient, right? It's just there for a moment in time and then it disappears. It's simply an appearance in consciousness and then it goes away. Let's think about our thoughts, right? Our thoughts are not always there. You'll have a thought come to your mind and then it'll pass. Same with emotions. You'll have emotions come to your mind and then they will pass. You'll have sensory sensations, right? Eyesight, touch, smell. You'll have these senses that you experience and then they'll go away. Everything is essentially impermanent. Even everything that you see, essentially your brain is hallucinating your conscious reality. So it's really, you're just seeing a manifestation of your internal world externally, right? And it's just a perception. And that changes as well. Your thoughts, your ideologies, your beliefs, they change over time as well. Everything is extremely impermanent. And this can cause a lot of discomfort for a lot of people, right? Because there's this thing called the ego. It's this automatic programming that makes you want to think that it's a real entity, that doesn't want change, right? It's a survival mechanism. So that could get people into trouble because the reality of our experience is that everything is transient. Absolutely everything is impermanent. But then we have this thing called the ego that wants to make us think that everything is finite, right? Everything is constant. That's what makes us not want to change our beliefs, makes us not want to act in a different way. It's what creates this rut, right? This rut of thought patterns and experiences. Most people think 90% of the same thoughts every single day. And this can cause some cognitive dissonance because in reality, everything is changing, yet we want to think that everything is constant and that we are the exact same person that we were yesterday. When in fact, you don't have a cell in your body that was there 10 years ago. Your body is changing. Every single thing in the world of form is impermanent. It changes. It's transient. So the more we can recognize this and embrace it, and embrace the change and embrace the impermanence, the better off we'll be. The less suffering that we'll have. So now let's say, okay, so everything in the physical world is impermanent. Well, then what's the reality? What's the thing that's not impermanent? What's the thing that's permanent? Okay? And if we go back to that quote, I want to repeat this quote one more time because it's such a great quote. The Course in Miracles, I definitely recommend the book. So, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So what are they talking about? What is this permanent, unthreatenable God that they're talking about? Well, it's the thing that has been with you for your entire existence. The one thing about you that is permanent. The one thing about you that does not change. And that is consciousness itself. That is the one thing that ever since you were a kid, even before you were a kid and after you die, that's the one thing that will not change, is that you are conscious. You are aware. And in the spiritual world, it's the same thing as God, right? The giant collective consciousness in which all form appears. The emptiness and fullness that animates the entire world, right? And when you concentrate on that, when you get away from thinking that you are this, impermanent body and these impermanent sensations and all of these things, and you start focusing on your true nature, that deep down that you are the consciousness that inhabits everything, right? That is your true self. Well, the world starts to get a lot better. This starts to seem just kind of like a video game. You know what I mean? And it's fun, and you want to win, and it's great, and it's cool, and form is beautiful, but you don't get attached to it. You don't get attached to those negative emotions. You don't get attached to those negative thoughts, and life becomes a whole lot better. So that's the realness behind everything. The one thing that is permanent, and that you know that is permanent. That's the one thing that has stayed constant throughout your entire life. It's consciousness itself. So also, let's talk about emotions. Because emotions are kind of in between. If you think about it, emotions, in terms of impermanence, in terms of what is real and what it's not, you'll find that, yeah, emotions are temporary, but for some reason they feel more real than just this surface level thought. There are different levels, right? You have this surface level thought and this automatic programming of the ego, and then you have some deeper kind of like an emotional level to you, and then you have this pure consciousness. So are some emotions or some feelings more real than others? The answer, in my opinion, is yes. I think that there are some emotions, and when you get to really deep level, it's hard to call some of these emotions, but let's just call them emotions for now. Some emotions are realer than others. Now, how can this be the case? Well, there are two main ways of operating in the world, two main feelings, emotions, whatever you want to call it, and that is fear and love. All negative emotions are based around fear. Anger, sadness, they're all based around fear, right? And I think that these are the least real emotions. Why? Because these emotions are based on thought. We already know that thought is extremely impermanent, and thought is one of the least real things about us, right? It's one of the most surface level things you can possibly have. It's just appearance and consciousness, right? But try and be angry or try and be sad without actually thinking a thought. Try it. Go for it. Be angry. Impossible, huh? You cannot be angry unless you think of a thought that can make you angry. Same with sadness, same for every single negative emotion. So if these emotions are based on something else, like thought, then how real can they really be? Now let's look at love, on the other hand. Well, what is the feeling of love? It's hardly even an emotion. It's essentially our base state. It's essentially the feeling of pure consciousness itself, the feeling of oneness, right? And that's why you can feel this kind of emotional manifestation of love when you get really close to a person, because you feel more of that oneness. You feel more of your consciousnesses are kind of connected in a way. You feel closer to that person. And that's the emotional manifestation of this thing we call love, when love is essentially just our base state. And you'll find that when you meditate and you actually clear all of your thoughts, again, meditation isn't about clearing your thoughts, but it's a side effect, right? If you get into a state where you can really quiet your mind, you'll find that you just experience these incredible emotions like bliss, love, joy, peace, and they don't require any thought. So that should tell you something right there. There are some emotions that have to have thought go along with them, and there are some emotions, the positive ones, that don't. And you'll see that obviously those emotions are more real. And they don't require some precursor. And so we'll see that this is actually our natural state, a state of pure love, bliss, joy, and it's incredible. That's our base state. That's our natural state. And then because of, this artificial intelligence we have going on called the ego, this artificial programming, our identification with thought, with the mind, we start having these negative emotions, and it's not really real. It's much less real than these positive emotions, than being truly happy. Being truly happy is the reality, and what we're experiencing now, the average person in the normal world, it's simply less real. So the implications of this are essentially, once you realize what's real and what's not, it's what you should focus on. Focus on the reality. Focus on the good, happy feelings. Focus on recognizing the ego for what it is. It's this false, artificial programming in your brain that's for survival, but it's not necessarily real. And once you start focusing on reality, the true reality, you'll become a lot happier. You'll have less attachment to these thoughts, and you'll just live an extremely happier and better life. And so, I think that pretty much wraps up the video. Did I really just do this in one take? I'll have to look over the footage, but I think I did. So I'm feeling pressured not to mess up at the very end. Don't mess up, Connor. You just did this in one take. You don't have to edit for the day. But yeah, guys, so I hope that gives you a better idea of exactly what's real and what's not, and what to focus on. And I think it gives some implications to society. We're living in a falsehood. We think that these negative emotions are normal. We think that this attachment to thought, the thought just kind of controlling our happiness, is real. But it's not. It's so obvious that it's not. So essentially, society's kind of living in a delusion. They're in a type of psychosis. That's what it is. So let's break out of it. Let's break out of it, man. Let's get more in touch with our true nature, our true reality, and the world will become a lot better place. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this spiritual self-development type content, please check out my Patreon. A lot of incredible opportunities on there. I don't want to get into them all. Just check it out. You have all sorts of access to amazing things on there. So go to the link in the descriptions below. Check those out. And like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Love you guys.